lọ́jọ́kọ́jọ́ làbẹ̀wò kúkú dùkú lóko podium international wọ́n ti wà tipẹ́tipẹ́ látìgbà tí wọ́n ti ń bàbọ̀ wọn ò fìgbà kan tẹ́rì o wọ́n ti wá ṣe bẹ̀bẹ̀ wọ́n ti gbé bẹ̀bẹ̀ dé podium cinema ni wọ́n tún gbé dé podium cinema lórí youtube ẹ fọ́lọ̀ wọn ká ẹ láìkì wọn ká ẹ subscribe ibẹ̀ lẹ́tì mọ̀ wọ àwọn àjá àbálẹ̀ fíìmù ẹ̀dọ̀kí fíìmù tó léfò gan tààrà podium cinema mo bẹ́rí fún yín fíìmù mẹ́sàn-án ọ̀tọ̀ọ̀tọ̀ ni wọ́n kó jáde o àwọn gbàǹkọ́gbé fíìmù èkíní májẹ̀mú ẹ̀gbọ́n èkejì my wet ẹ̀kẹta ọmọ ẹni ẹ̀kẹrin àlàmú èkó ẹ̀karùn-ún àìmọ̀ ṣẹ̀wárí pé nǹkan kì í ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ ràgó ó kọjá bẹ́ẹ̀ eléyìí lẹ́tìkẹjù èdè yorùbá ni wọ́n fi ṣe àwọn fíìmù yìí ẹlẹ́ẹ̀kẹfà sẹ́ẹ̀kẹsàn-án èdè òyìnbó ni wọ́n kọ́ ẹ̀kẹfà tẹ́mà èkeje the casting ẹ̀kẹjọ m1 the detective ẹ̀kẹsàn 100 m1 the detective at 100 orí síríìsì lẹ́fì máa wò ó ìyẹn dàgbéléwò nìyẹn podium international podium cinema ẹ fọ́lọ̀ wọn ká ẹ láìkì wọn lórí youtube wọ́n wà lórí facebook wọ́n wà lórí instagram podium cinema ó ti dọbẹ̀ ẹ subscribe.
Good evening. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. The network was a bit sloppy there, but we thank God it's much better today compared to this time last week. So I want to thank you basically for tuning in. This is episode 12 today of the analysis. What the analysis is done is try to bring to us what really happened prior to amalgamation, which happened in 1914. And once the amalgamation was completed in 1914, Lugard went on to document all his program for the new nation from 1914 to 1919. More so, particularly because quite a lot of people have said, oh, it was the North and the South and these that came together and signed an agreement. There was no such agreement as to people agreeing to become Nigeria. Everything was just British schemism. And we saw the reason. The reason was because the South was producing well in the tune of millions every year, but the North was only producing roughly about 70,000 a year. And so they were being heavily subsidized by British taxpayers. And then Lugard was called upon to be the midwife to to fuse elements of different feathers together. And then they called it a country or a nation. We all know that Nigeria, as it is today, is not a nation, has never been a nation, will not be a nation, and can never be a nation. It's just in the imagination of both Britain and some privileged Nigerians who are talking about Nigeria being a nation. Nigeria is not a nation. We have nations within Nigeria. So we have a Yoruba nation that is within Nigeria. We have the Arewa nation that is within Nigeria. We have the Igbo nation that is within Nigeria. We have Benin nation that is within Nigeria. We have the Bagi nation and quite a lot of other nations, the Kanuri, the Biroms. Some are tribes, some are not fully nations, some are tribes, but that does not recuse them the opportunity to decide which direction they want to go. So Lugard, from our earlier episode, Lugard said the two reasons he joined, which was the first one I just narrated, which was the finance, The second one was railway. So there was no way they could develop the North. No, not in a million years, because there was nothing there to use in developing them. They were making they were barely able to make 70,000, and Britain was subsidizing them with 314,000 annually. So, and that was going into maintaining the armed forces, which we call the West African Frontier Forces then. So, some British officers and then some local Nigerian officers or Southern Nigerian officers. So that's what the majority of the money was going for. So they could barely have money to even run the administration. So it was two options. Britain could either let the North go because it was a burden on the British taxpayers, or they could look for an alternative solution. And in 1905, Lugard wrote a memorandum and say, the South is materially prosperous. Why not let's amalgamate them? Once we amalgamate them together, we'll take the material wealth of the South to build the North, and then we'll use that money to build trains and railways. And what do we see today? We see the president of Nigeria using the Yoruba money to go and build train from his village to Niger Republic, a project that has no feasibility of making anything whatsoever to the Nigerian coffers. And the resultant effect of that is the bandits, the terrorists, the hoodlums are now attacking fare users, destroying the trains and cutting away passengers as hostages and demanding ransom. That's the pity case Nigeria has come to. So if we perhaps understand this amalgamation, it may help us understand a little about what happened then, where we are now, and what we should be doing in terms of de-amalgamating this nomenclature called Nigeria. So I'm going to be focusing on the railway today as a force for integration and amalgamation of Nigeria. But last week, we did talk about the finance. We talked about Nigeria coming together and then uniting the budget. The budget of the North was always following that of Britain because they got direct subsidy from Britain. We, the South, we didn't get any subsidy and we didn't need it and we will not need it, even going forward into the Yoruba nation. So the North, they got subsidy and they started their own calendar from April till March. So April 1st to March 31st. Whereas in the South, we have our own calendar from January 1 to December 31st. So once it was amalgamated, the two calendar was joined together to just become one. They still have their individual budgets. So the Lagos colony was having their own budget. The what we call Southern Nigeria was having their own budget, and the Northern Nigeria was also having their own budget. And Lugard talked about the debt the country was owing because it now had to be amalgamated, so that the debt the North was owing became the debt of Nigeria. The prospects, the financial positions and everything became the problem of Nigeria. So, and then Nigeria had a new debt charge that we started owing. So once he's talked about the debt of Nigeria, Lugard then went on to talk about the prospects and then the reserve. The reserve was depleted because he used the reserve from the Western Railway to start building railway to the east. We had over almost more than £1 million in those days, which is in today's money will be going to over 500 million in our reserve. And he used that money to build railway in the east, which was recouped back. It was recouped, but it was used. And then by the time Lugard was leaving, he estimated that the reserve had gone back to about 800 and something thousand pounds. I'm sorry if all these figures blow your mind. I'm not intending to work your head too much on mathematics, especially that we know that £1 in those days is not the same thing as £1 in these days. We even know that in the 1940s, 1950s, you could build a house for £1. Even in the 1980s or the 1970s, you could complete a house for £50, £80. And then if I can't even fill my tank with £80 in today's money. So it tells you what those money are. In those days, they were big money. They were like millionaire or billionaires. So today we'll be looking at railway. What did Lugard do with the railway? Because it was because of this railway they discovered. He said they discover, but I don't like using that word discover, because something that already exists, you don't discover it. The Forcados is in Warri, but along the Forcados we have Opobo and Ogoja. Those axes go on to form what we know as present-day Port Harcourt. So the financial position at the time, especially in the end of 1918, because Lugard left before the end of 1919. So at the end of 1918, which was end of a financial year, Lugard had already spent £8 million in those days on building railway. So either open lines or lines that are constructed. So open lines are lines that are still maybe under construction or under. So one thing he discovered was, and which is normal in every budget, is recurring expenditure. So expenditure that you just cannot do without. So and when it comes to government spending, recurring expenditure always happen. Because the one thing we have lacked in our today's world in Nigeria is we are good at building the best stadium in the world. But after the event, what grows up in the stadium becomes a grass, and people don't use it any further, and then it becomes a waste. And then we are now clamoring that we want to build another one. So one of the things Lugard quickly discovered was recurring expenditure. And it was a major factor because it meant that it spent a lot in trying to meet up and catch up with the budget. So trying to catch up with the budget. So already they've expended 8 point something million, 8.67, let's say close to 9 million. Due to the war, there was inadequate funding, and inadequate funds were spent either on recurring expenditure or whatever. So the recurring expenditure for 1918 was about 800 and something thousand. Now, meanwhile, Yoruba nation, Yoruba as a whole on its own, was making over 1 million on railway. So we were making 1 million on railway, and he estimated that on liquor and spirits we were making over another 1 point something million. So we have two big financial generating capacity in that regard. And then we now have cocoa. A lot of people always talk about cocoa. If we can put our house in order, I am very confident that in today's money, we could make up to $2 to $3 billion on transport alone. Then when we now come to water transport, to rail transport, and to air transport, that could be like a major game changer for us. I've been to Turkey. Two countries I've been to, Turkey and Ethiopia. Now, these two countries, it's very significant, and even Morocco. So we have, I'm just using countries that are making headwaves in Morocco with their international transport. These three countries are making, and they are national carriers. If you go to Addis Ababa airport, you see them proudly 9 out of every 10 plane you will see is Ethiopian airline. If you go to Addis Ababa airport, if you go to any airport in Turkey, because they have quite a lot of international airport, whether the Istanbul airport or the Antalya airport, you see 9 out of 10 airline you see, they are all Turkish air. And that is generating huge resources for them. Even when I went to Istanbul and I had to, and they are so organized. I was coming from North Cyprus and I got to Turkey, to Istanbul, and I missed my connecting flight. Before you knew it, they've organized hotel and everything for me. I don't have to pay. They took me to the hotel and I was able to sleep and had a good night and everything, did all the processing and everything. That was what the airline did without any stress and any faff. I was able to sleep the night in a 5-star hotel, and the following morning I took my bag back to the airport and then straight to back on my journey. But in Nigeria, we don't enjoy all those things. They will think they're doing you a favor. The same thing if you go to Morocco. If you go to Morocco, you see Air Maroc, and you see that these people are making quite a lot for their nation. But let's bring the reverse. Go to any airport in Nigeria. If you go to what's it called? Even the airport is, you be in an airport and your rain is troubling you. It's an eyesore. And then what flight do you see? You see different airline coming in to take the money away. And even the airport, I don't even think we own it, because different consortium under different names and different guys, they make the money and then it goes out of our terrain. So we have quite a lot of resources that are bleeding, even in the Yoruba region today, because the Yoruba has now failed. Yoruba has failed to exhibit any form of responsibility. We now look to Nigeria to look after us or to take care of us. That, I think, was a big mistake. It is a big mistake, and it will be a big mistake, bigger mistake going forward if we don't reverse that trend. Now, in spite of all the things that happened, Lugard was happy that the investment he has done in the train is beginning to pay off, because we had the war from 1914 to 1918. We had some restricted product. We had many things that have happened. Some finances were tight. He had to do economy in some place. So they were thinking that they would be in deficit. But at the end of the day, they had a surplus of about 60,000 pounds in those days. So we're talking of millions of pounds in today's money. So he talked about the lines that we are open. So Lugard started building different forms of in railway. We all know that railway connect to each other. So one town could connect to another town, and from that town it goes to another town. But the way they were building this colonial railway, it's very different from saying they want to develop the town or they want to develop the railway system. Now, the way they were building this railway was, if they see a mineral resource in your town or in your country, so if they see a mineral resources in the eastern region or wherever, they will build a railway to that place, because all they were after was just the resources. So, for instance, they found coal in Udi, in close to Enugu State. They found coal there. So they now built a railway service. Lugard was now thinking, okay, from Enugu, he should build the port at Onitsha. But he said that would not be adequate. So he went with he went with two people anyway, the railway manager and one other manager to go and do an investigation. Things our government don't do today. Once they sit in their palaces, they don't come out again. So they don't feel what we're feeling. So he did the investigation. It was during the investigation he discovered that Bonny area and then decided to build a port there. So it was when he discovered that place and said, oh, because he thought it was going to be cost a fortune to build a train. So when he discovered that place, he said, okay, it would be good to build a port there so that the coal they get from Udi in Enugu State, rather than transport it to Lagos, because it's going to take quite a while, they can just transport it to Port Harcourt. It wasn't Harcourt then, but it later became Port Harcourt. So he used it to compensate the Secretary of State, Lord Louis Harcourt. So he built that port there so that once the British cargo come or vessel, they can take it from there. And they had quite a lot of what was it called? They had quite a lot of coal that had already been mined. So, and then the coal was also used to power the railways, if I say the railways and the rails that were running on the lines. So that was used. So he was thinking that it would be very difficult to build the railway line there, but as fate would have it, it went well. So he now created Port Harcourt. So the next one he was thinking of doing was Udi to Kaduna. I told us in an earlier episode that he wanted to get to build Kaduna as the capital of Nigeria, but because of the war, it couldn't happen. So that set a lot of setback. So that didn't happen. So he described the depth, which was about 30 to 40 feet, which we could say about 10 or 15 meters, and then it was about 700 feet wide. So he was able to, it was one of the reasons why he could build the port in from Enugu to Port Harcourt. So he then thought of building, because then they were getting tin in Bauchi. So he then thought of building a railway line from there to Bauchi as well. So he thought of building it to Jema in Bukuru in Bauchi, build the line. So the railway line will connect from Bauchi to Enugu to Port Harcourt straight to London. So you see how they were doing it. So they weren't building Ikotekpene because it will not give them anything, or they weren't building Ilaje because probably they don't need fish, or they weren't building how will I call it, Baro or wherever. So wherever they were building was where they could get resources. So, and the South was also doing well. The export from Opobo, which became Harcourt, Port Harcourt, they too were getting quite a lot from their resources, from the oleaginous product, the tin, not tin, the kernel and palm oil and all the rest. They were making up to £1 million annually as well. So they were doing well for themselves. So we got lignite around Ilorin. So they were going to connect a train from Udi to Ilorin to the Niger, to cross the Niger, but it proved difficult. They couldn't achieve that. So that caused quite a lot of burden. Now, there was now the issue of coal, because to power Nigeria then, Nigeria was getting coal from Britain. And the Welsh coal was one of the ones they were using, which was very expensive then. So 1 ton of Welsh coal then was about £5. In today's money, it's about 300 and no, in today's price, it's about 325 $30 per ton. But the coal they were getting from the Enugu then, I think they were not mining it properly, and then he was trying to improve it, but then it was costing about 60 shillings, shillings and pence. Sorry, I'm not used to the old money, 60 shillings or whatever. So he says he could not compete with the coal coming from Welshland, and 70. So the price was always 70%. Now the price became 70% below what the Welsh coal was selling for. So during the war, coal was one of the restricted products so that it didn't come to Nigeria. But after some time, they allowed it to come, and then the price of coal had fallen dramatically. Coal was now selling for 105 shillings. No, was supposed to be selling for 105 shillings, but I think it was now selling for 36 shillings. So once they've mined that of Nigeria and coal, it wasn't that it was coming at a price of about 58. So it could not compete because the international one was more cheaper. So, and then they need money for reserve and all those things in order to be able to mine and get all the things they needed. So it couldn't compete. So Lugard thought that for it to be able to compete, the Welsh coal needs to sell for at least 105 shillings per ton. Then the Enugu coal can conveniently sell for around 76 shillings or whatever. Then for the Lagos line, that was always full. So they were making good money from there. But from the coal field to the port, it was 70% of the rail transport was basically coal product. So that's what it was. They were using. They were carrying. So he thought, well, 70% and then 30% passengers, but he thought with time it would begin to build it, to build momentum. And then it also, because of the transport now, they were able to get more tin. I told us before that tin was one of the major products we exported. Prior to then, he exported about 9,000 plus. Now he could now get up to 20 to 30,000 tons of tin, which was one of the major products they were getting from Nigeria that was helping them to build their war machine and all the products they need to build their war. And he invited Mr. Best, who did a survey of the coal for him. So Mr. Best said, well, in difficult times, he saw that Nigeria did well, and he believes that after the war, it will even do better. Lugar said he could not vouch for it, but that's what he said. So the coal they were now getting, he reckoned they will get about they were getting about 400 tons a day in Enugu. So they were now getting between 400 to 760, 770. So he reckoned that would be about 200,000 tons a year. So coal now became exclusively government product, restricted. I told us some product were just like the tin was just government. So they didn't give private investors. But for the coal field, they gave, what was it called? They gave Royal Niger Company a lease to go and mine, and they did exploration. They spent about 3,000. The report didn't come out favorably, so they stopped it. And then he investigated for petroleum and other things around there. They didn't find petrol there, but they continued with their project. So he sort of now started building rail. So he built it from Zungeru to Kano. So that they can take the granite from Kano to Niger State and then sell to Benin Republic, then to Meduguri, so they can sell to Cameroon and Chad, and then to Sokoto. So basically, what Lugard was doing was anywhere that he knows that there's business or there's resources for him to take, he then build a train. So they were taking the resources straight to the port and then straight to Britain. So everything was just a matter of building the empire. And then he built Aba to Ikot Ekpene, and then he did extensions to Sokoto, and then built the Warri line. So he said the immediate task is the completion of the railway that had already begun. So his immediate task was to complete all the open lines that are under construction, and then build it into the French frontier. And it was as a matter of policy for him. So once that was done, the Niger whatever did not work. So there was now the issue of getting labor to work on the coal field. We talked about slavery in the north and whatever, but in the south, where in the Udi township in Enugu, they had quite a lot of population there as well. So it was not difficult for them to get population. So they built the convict prison as well. They built the prisons, and they were using quite a lot of the prisoners to work the coal field as a paid laborer. And that's one of the things we need to discuss as a society, because there's no society where you won't have people going into prison, except you are a country like Norway, who invest in the people, and their prisons yard is even is now being decongested. Or you are like Holland. Holland now even have to take prisoners from other country to serve their time in Holland and then send them back. It's quite a pain for the families, because if you have to visit your family member, you now need to be thinking of visas and things. But let's look at the project itself of using prisoners to work. I think we call it a correctional service. The fact that somebody is in prison does not mean that we can restrict their liberty, but then we should put them to work, so that by the time they come out of prison is to rehabilitate, is to get people to correct their wrongs and to become sober about what they have done, and then try to build on the what's it called, the evil they have done, and repent. It's only when people become hardened criminals and you think they're not safe, then you can put them in a maximum prison and things. But prison is supposed to be a correctional facility. So they were getting laborers as well to work, and those laborers were doing the work, and they were taking over from the Europeans, who were also working the field. So the local laborers, they were not like the artisans and things who were wasting cement and stones and blocks and things. They were not like that. And then the coal, there was also some what's it called, finds in the Iva Valley, which is about 20 kilometers from Udi. They are all in Enugu. They are all in the same place. If you're driving there today, it will probably take you about 30 minutes drive. But there were so many. There were so many. What's it called? Fields. There is a large basin or field or whatever, coal field there that they're mining. I don't know if they're still mining it, but what it did was it helped to be able to build the hospitals and the police station and other developments that came to that place. So Lugard then planned that if eventually the government supply is satisfied, then it can give the remaining supply to private investors. And he reckoned whatever the government could not use, which amounted to about 8,000 tons every month, would be given to private people to develop. So it developed a future policy that they were going to build a tunnel. They were going to build a tunnel to pass there to develop it. And when it tested for minerals, it tested for water, it tested for volatile materials, it tested for fixed carbon, it tested for ash, tested for sulfate and ammonia, fertilizer, and other things. But at that time, there was no prospect of oil in that area. So he didn't go too much into probing further. And we know that Lugard left Nigeria around 1919. So perhaps if we see the records of the later records of the people who took over from Lugard, then we can see how far they went. But if we fast forward to 1919, let's just say 1920, and then there was World War in 1939. So roughly about 19 years, another war broke out again in Europe, which was very bloody and deadly. And upwards of nearly 60 million people died in that war. We see the pain and the grief and so many things. So when that war ended in 1945, that's when the issue of self-determination came up. And we know that the practice they did in the northern Nigeria to say, you people, you're free to ask for your freedom, but we're not going to make it a wholesale affair. We're not going to make it a wholesale affair. If we make it a wholesale affair, then it will become it will cause a social chaos. So when happened, that war ended in 1945. That was when great minds like Pa Obafemi Awolowo started to think that we need to do something. We need to do something. In 1946, they came together. Around 1948, they started building. But meanwhile, there are some people who had also been working, people like Herbert Macaulay, who had also been working that the Yoruba people should get their freedom and get out of Nigeria. So around 1950, so between 1945 and 1950, which was about 5 years, 1950, the pressure was too much on the British. And around 1951, there was a protest in Lagos to the colonial office. Once that protest was done in Lagos, the colonial office had no option than to say, okay, we will give you semi-self-rule. So the semi-self-rule now say, you will go and govern yourself. You will go and govern yourself in a semi-way. So you'll be governing yourself, you will be having oversight. And in 1951, they made the Macpherson Constitution. When they made the Macpherson Constitution in 1951, Paolo became the premier of Western region from 19. He assumed office in 1952. So he ruled up until 1959 when he decided to go into the federal legislation after drafting the federal constitution for Nigeria, which was perhaps, well, some people say it's a mistake, some people say it's whatever, but getting into Nigeria, all the things he achieved for the Western region, it's a shame that from there, that is the only thing we can point to. Free education, which majority of us still enjoy today, but which has been eroded because the school fees quite a lot of people are paying now is very ridiculous. Free healthcare, which is now been taken away from us. And now we see that a lot of our people are dying, and they are dying needlessly, either because there's no adequate care or because there's been neglect in their care, which is a shame, actually, which is a shame. And add to that, we now see the situation where it's greedy people who are now taking over, now thinking the country is their own. And we see the case of Anambra State, the former governor, who, when he was leaving office, left only 400 million naira. So it tells us that nearly 3/4 of the states in Nigeria are bankrupt. How can you pay salaries with that kind of money? How can you run your essential services? How can you run your any services at all? So it becomes a problem. Now, Buhari is also saying that we make 6 trillion annually, but we have a budget of 18 trillion. So we're entering deficit. Lugard was saying here that even when we were not making money and there was no money, he was thinking hell was going to be let loose. There was still profit at the end of the year. But these our governments are getting debt upon debt. And as if the debt is not enough, they are now telling us they will go and borrow 4 trillion naira for subsidy. For subsidy that we know what subsidy costs in Nigeria. Now they want to go and borrow. So the issue is they're not borrowing the money for subsidy. They're only borrowing the money to pay themselves. They're borrowing the money to enrich themselves. They're borrowing the money to tell themselves that this venture they have started, the slavery, it started since 17th century, 16th century, 18th century, 19th century, in the 20th century. They want to continue it in this 21st century. And it is your duty and my duty to say enough is enough. So I'm just going to end it here today. And when we come back next week, so we are almost at the end. We've got about 2 or 3 episodes to go to look into, and then we'll be ending the analysis. Unfortunately, when we come next, we'll be looking at the liquor and the revenue it brought into the Nigeria coffers, and how the Yoruba people were used to pay the debt of Nigeria. And then we'll also look at education. What impact did Lugard have with regards to education in Nigeria when he was as a premier or prime minister, when he was governor general? So the analysis would only be coming up every Monday, 8 till 9, same time. I understand UK and Nigeria are now using the same time, so the analysis would only be on Mondays. The Wednesdays we've had to shelve it due to other activities, meetings, and things that are going on. So please bear with us. And also we have either 2 or 3 episodes coming on, and that would be the end of the amalgamation report. But other things are still in the pipeline, so maybe I will let us know towards the end when we finally wrap it up. And at the end of the amalgamation report, we can then look into other things that we can have a general overview of the amalgamation report and how Britain had since then till today taken possession of basically your life and my life. So until we come again next week morning, remain blessed and God bless you.
lọ́jọ́kọ́jọ́ làbẹ̀wò kúkú dùkú lóko Podium International wọ́n ti wà tipẹ́tipẹ́ látìgbà tí wọ́n ti ń bàbọ̀ wọn ò fìgbà kan tẹ́rì o wọ́n ti wá ṣe bẹ̀bẹ̀ wọ́n ti gbé bẹ̀bẹ̀ dé Podium Cinema ni wọ́n tún gbé dé Podium Cinema lórí YouTube ẹ fọ́lọ̀ wọn kẹ́ ẹ láìkì wọn kẹ́ ẹ subscribe ibẹ̀ lẹ́tì mọ̀ wọ àwọn àjá àbálẹ̀ fíìmù ẹ̀dọ̀kí fíìmù tó léfo gan tààrà Podium Cinema mo bẹ́rí fún yín fíìmù 9 ọ̀tọ̀ọ̀tọ̀ ni wọ́n kó jáde o àwọn gbàǹkangbè fíìmù èkíní májẹ̀mú ẹ̀gbọ́n èkejì my wet ẹ̀kẹta ọmọ ẹni ẹ̀kẹrin àlàmú èkó ẹ̀karùn-ún àìmọ̀ ṣẹ̀wárí pé nǹkan kì í ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ ràgbó ó kọjá bẹ́ẹ̀ eléyìí lẹ́ti kẹjù èdè Yorùbá ni wọ́n fi ṣe àwọn fíìmù yìí ẹlẹ́ẹ̀kẹfà sẹ́ẹ̀kẹsàn-án èdè òyìnbó ni wọ́n kọ́ ẹ̀kẹfà tẹ́mà èkeje the casting ẹ̀kẹjọ M1 the detective ẹ̀kẹsàn-án 100 M1 the detective at 100 orí síríìsì lẹ́fì máa wò ó ìyẹn dàgbéléwò nìyẹn Podium International Podium Cinema ẹ fọ́lọ̀ wọn kẹ́ ẹ láìkì wọn lórí YouTube wọ́n wà lórí Facebook